Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, it's Conway the Machine versus Funkmaster Flex versus Pete Rock. And it is the final episode of Hip Hop Now podcast. Yep, I said that. Yeah. I ain't crying, you crying. Start the show.
Well, let's get right to business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic album.
Permanent Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop, music, and culture that happened throughout the week. Big shout out to all the websites, all the outlets in which I got some of my news from, right? HipHopDX.com, XXL Magazine, Ambrosia for Heads, DJBooth.net, AllHipHop.com, and the numerous places where I got some of these stories from. Also, big extra shout out to the producers of this podcast over at patreon.com/hiphopnow. Now let's take care of business first. I know you heard it. Some of y'all think you heard it, but not sure if you heard it in the intro. Yes, this is the final episode of Hip Hop Now podcast. Now, let me speak. This isn't the end of my content creation. This isn't the end of your subscription to this podcast. Content will continue to flow through this stream, but video content will start to take the forefront. So everything that I will produce going forward will be derived from a video version of the content. So you still have the option to just listen or watch. But most importantly, Hip Hop Now podcast began as a sort of like a way of moving on from my blogging days. I used to have a blog called hiphoppolitic.com. I used to write over there. I used to post videos, albums of the years, all kinds of things. And over time, as the industry does, people would read articles less and would really only show up to your site for videos or ways to download music or to hear music. So it became more visual. And then I realized years ago that podcasting is probably something that's going to take off, which it did. So years ago, I decided to end my blog and start Hip Hop Now podcast. Now, I've said this before on my anniversary shows. Hip Hop Now podcast was essentially something that I had produced for radio called One to Flow On. And that was basically me taking a hot topic of the week, right? And then talking about it. 2 minutes in length. That's how long it was. It was only 2 minutes. But when I stopped doing that for the show Strictly Hip Hop, I remember being on Twitter way back in the days, like 2009, and having a couple people who used to listen to me on the radio say, man, I wish that was still on the show. So that told me, oh, well, people must really want to hear my take on different things in hip hop. So Hip Hop Now podcast was created as a way to provide you with all the news you would need for that week regarding hip hop. In a lot of ways, I tried to stay away from stories that were only about this rapper getting arrested, this rapper getting shot, sometimes, just the nonsense, and try to stick to the music or the context of a debate. And I think it worked well, and it continues to work well. But as we start to go into the next phase of content creation in the digital space, it's becoming more and more about video content and more about live content, meaning live streaming, meaning Twitter Spaces or Clubhouse. So that's where I'm looking to focus my efforts. Obviously, because of the dedicated listeners to Hip Hop Now podcast, I will keep this feed alive with new content. But this is the final episode of Hip Hop Now podcast itself. Everything I do going forward will be branded as a part of Hip Hop Now podcast. So it will live on, but not as a hip hop news program. You'll still get caught up in the latest content and debates, but the format that you've become accustomed to over the years will change. Now, let's get right into the business. So, if you have been on the social media space, and trust me, this topic deserves its own episode, the final episode, because it's a really good topic regarding the state of hip hop today. Conway the Machine, as you know, Griselda Records, drum work, all that good stuff. Underground, hardcore hip hop, kind of brought that New York style of hip hop back, right? Basically did an interview or a live and talked a lot about DJs like DJ Sus One and Funkmaster Flex in particular, not supporting New York artists, not supporting real hip hop. And he was really salty about it, right? And he was saying, thank God I don't need you cats to eat. Now, Conway sort of has a history, and I'm just keeping it a buck because I've watched it because I'm a fan, but I've watched him on social media big up his next project, drop it, and then not too long after it's out, tend to be public about how people don't support, whether that's a magazine, media outlet, radio station, whatever. Now, he is not lying, right? That's one thing he's not doing. He's not lying because it's true what he has to say, right? But in the same breath, he says he doesn't care or he doesn't need this or we don't need y'all, whatever, right? You do care. You wouldn't address it in a public forum. Maybe you step to Flex personally. Maybe you have, you call up to the station and voice your disdain for the lack of hip hop support, true hip hop support, right? Boom bap, basically. But maybe you wanted to put him on blast, right? Maybe you wanted to point it out. Maybe you wanted Flex and Sus One to know how you felt. And I get it. But what was most interesting, and I knew it was going to happen, I wasn't sure it was going to happen, but I knew it was going to happen, was the simple fact that Funkmaster Flex was definitely going to say something back. So I have the tweet that Funkmaster Flex put out addressing Conway the Machine's allegations. One of those allegations, which I did mention, is the fact that Flex will really only drop bombs on your music and play it if you pay him, which has kind of been a running thing. And I don't think Conway's lying. Maybe Flex ain't getting paid today, but I believe he was getting paid once upon a time, right? So this is what Flex said in regards to Conway the Machine's allegations. This was on Twitter. So let's begin. You're managed by Roc Nation, Jay-Z, signed to Shady Records, Eminem, distributed by Interscope Records, a major label. Let's keep going. You and your team have had a feature from Jay-Z, Eminem, Lil Wayne, J. Cole, Jadakiss, Travis Scott, French Montana, and more. Wasn't you on Kanye's Donda album? I'm going to give you the advice Paul Rosenberg should have gave you. You're a 40-plus bars rapper. Sorry, lyricist. that has had every resource possible. If you are not happy with them cosigns, I think you have peaked, my guy. What you think? You're only going to take this as disrespect because truth might be a bit much for you. Signed, Grandpa / Wheelchair Bandit, Warm Milk General. I don't know about that one. That's pause. I might need a podcast. What y'all think? So that's what Funk Flex had to say. He's not lying in some regards, right? Because, again, what Flex is saying sort of speaks to, or like basically it makes Conway's complaint mute, right? He's not a rapper who needs a shot and he's hot, but Flex won't play him. He's a rapper that has every huge resource exposure general in the world to be big. So he really shouldn't be worried about the fact that Flex isn't playing his music because he's already made it to the audience. Now, some will say, well, that's Jay-Z's audience, so that's Eminem's audience, so that's Lil Wayne's audience. People. Those cosigns mean a lot. You know why? Because they introduce you to a whole nother fan base that don't know you as an artist, right? J. Cole fans who are all about J. Cole hear him do a song with Conway the Machine, they go check out Conway the Machine, and he winds up getting some fans. Conway said himself when he signed to Eminem, he got a whole bunch of other types of fans. So the proof is in the pudding, right? You align yourself with essentially everybody you would need to. I mean, you could just have M and Jay-Z cosigns and you're good, but you also have Lil Wayne. So I don't disagree with Flex in that regard because it makes total sense. But this is how it really gets complicated, right? Because Conway made some points that I'd agree with, and Flex made some points that I agree with. But then P. Rock jumped in. And P. Rock said, you don't play real artists no more. You talk ish like you better than everybody, and I believe all threats with real talent and music were removed by a plan out the way for the new ish to happen. You're NY, N-word, treating the other NY artists who put in work like our career is over. You stop playing Wu-Tang, play No Griselda, nothing. Stop playing a lot of artists, then you judge MFs and make fun of the fact that you control what you want when you on air. So much good music out here to be ignored, and as a black dude treating other black talented people like they beneath you. You don't make beats or rap, but you ished on artists because you could, and you stopped supporting real hip-hop music to cater to whoever got you in their pocket. That sucker DJ behavior. When I was a DJ on Hot 97 and WBLS, I never fronted on artists in hip-hop not playing their music. I played everybody-ish, even West Coast-ish. You was fronting on. That's why N-Words is upset, because you ished for no reason. Black people not supposed to treat each other like that, but these days money will make an N-word do anything. Always been a funny style dude from day one, only to front on N-words later and run that mouth of yours whack-ish. Funk Flex, you do this in your own city to your own people and be nonchalant about ish, laughing like it's a joke, shaking my head. Now, this is the last thing I'm going to read. But before I get to that, Pete Rock also has a point, because a lot of what he's saying is true. A lot of what he's saying is true. But what Pete Rock does need to understand, what he's describing is not how radio works, right? It's so easy to get wrapped up in the culture and believe that everything in the culture should play out for the record labels and the radio stations. And that's just not the truth. He should know that. I think he knows that. But I get what he's saying because it's difficult to digest that thought knowing that there was a time where real hip hop was played on the radio and it was about the most talented and the best artists. So I get it because that was the hot thing to do. But things have changed. So Funkmaster Flex typed this on Instagram with a picture of Pete Rock. Clown alert. I have watched this guy give his opinion of me for about 2 years. He's one of my favorite DJs, producers, and MCs. I hope that some of our mutual friends will understand that Goofy has been begging for smoke. Now, I'm not going to go any further, right? Because we read it. We need to talk about it a little bit because we read it, right? So Funkmaster Flex went on to say so much more about P-Rock being high all the time and in his basement and getting fired from those stations because he didn't want to change with the times. And, basically being the pot they call the black or whatever it's called. You know what I'm saying? But essentially, he brought up the fact that, well, here go P-Rock talking about, Funkmaster Flex is hating on, hip-hop artists who are black, who are doing it now, when P-Rock were hating on drill rappers who are from NY, who are black also, and not that long ago. That is true. That is a fact. That is not made up. We've all seen it. I think what some people may do is dismiss it because they don't like drill rap. But if we're talking about the points, we're talking about the points. So what was Conway's point? You should play my music, our style of music. What was Flex's point? Why are you begging for a look when you got all the looks in the world? What was Pete Rock's point? You've been a gatekeeper looking for money, bleeding artist drive, and not supporting real hip hop or the music. And what was Funkmaster Flex's point? You don't evolve with the times. Listen, they all make great points and they all are telling the truth in a lot of regards. Because this thing ain't simple. This thing ain't simple. But let me make it simple for you. Right? Times change. And hip hop was a very young art form and still is. And it took a minute for there to be a lineage of music and for the generations to come in and change. Because remember, there was a long time before a generation came in and did anything different and called it hip hop. And the bottom line is, when it comes to the business of selling music, they are going to move on from what is old. If tomorrow, 14-year-old girls, 14 to 19-year-old girls decided all they want to hear is boom bap, that's what you would hear on the radio. You know why I say that? Because stations like Hot 97, like these urban stations, they don't cater to what the boys like, because the boys like whatever the girls like. It's just a fact. It was always that way. Why do you think it was so easy for the shiny suit era to take over? Because the girls are more likely to listen and listen longer and listen all the time. They're more likely to go out and buy anything that seems like a fad or a style or the thing to do. And we, the guys, do whatever they do. So honestly, when you think about the demographic of these urban stations and the type of music that always seems to blow up, The guys may like it, but more ladies like it. And that's who it's for. Conway does not make music that would be attractive to the ladies. Now, don't get me wrong. There's some ladies, they love that hardcore hip hop. But they are not the majority. They are the minority. They just are. And I think in a lot of ways, Flex is wrong too, right? Because it's not just about Conway not understanding how radio works and that playing his songs in the midst of the drill stuff, they just going to turn the radio. These kids don't know you. They don't want to know you. They don't want to know Wu-Tang. And you playing their music is not going to get them to like them. There are other ways to do that, right? Features, which Conway has a ton of them. Now, I thought Flex was a little disrespectful with a 40-plus rapper with the bars stuff because I think ageism is a problem in hip-hop. He shouldn't go there because that's wrong. But where Conway has a point about Flex is that gatekeeper stuff because it's true. It's literally true. It is the one power he has, and he's wielded it for years. And he will use this controversy to boost his numbers on the radio so people can hear what he, who want to know what he has to say will hear it because he was advertising his show and talking about it. I didn't listen, but he was. And in some ways, it might work out for Conway, right? Flex giving you this much attention. Some people who don't know you are going to go listen to your music because as opposed to back in the days, you had to go buy Conway's album to hear it. So chances are not a lot of people who are going to do that. But now with streaming services, well, if they hear Flex ran about a dude named Conway the Machine and Pete Rock, and they've never heard of any of them, they're going to go listen to their music. And some are going to walk away and like it. That's just a fact. But Funkmaster Flex did become a gatekeeper. And he does put hip-hop in a bad position. The weird part is he's also on a station with a guy like Rosenberg that embraces it. So it's sort of weird. Now with Pete Rock, it's a little different, right? Pete Rock has openly hated on drill rap. And though Flex was wrong by saying, the origins were New York, because the origins aren't New York. It's a little bit of Chicago, and the New York version is lifted from, I believe, a European version of drill music. So kind of New York kind of owns it now. But those are New York rappers, and those are black dudes. And Pete Rock, more than once, openly, would talk down upon it. Now, some of the stuff he would say, he ain't lying, right? But at the end of the day, if your argument against Flex is that he won't support his own, well, you have actively shown that you don't either. Now, I do not like Funkmaster Flex calling basically Pete Rock a has-been, because that's what he was doing. Don't do that. Pete Rock to me has come back from being really quiet in the hip hop game. And Flex said something about he ain't released something dope in a long time. I beg to differ. Some of the stuff he's done with like Flea Lord and a couple of other cats is crazy. But Flex, you ain't playing it, so how would you know? Right? I'm pretty sure you had to go ask somebody or you use Google and you ain't really researched. You just kind of took the first couple of things you saw. So I said all that to say this. Commercial radio is commercial radio. It's been like this. It's not all Flex. Some of it is program director. If they have a music director, commercial radio is a different animal. It's not just play what's hot hip-hop wise. The end. Those days are over, fam. The stakes is just way too high. But the bonus is, like to Conway the Machine's point, he doesn't need him. No artist needs Flex. Y'all don't need Flex no more to drop bombs. That is old. That cosign means absolutely nothing now. When you see people freestyle on Flex show, before it used to be about Flex and the fact that he was co-signing who was rapping. Now you don't even care. You just came for the bars. You don't even see him sitting there half the time. You don't even notice him half the time. Those days of him dropping bombs and teasing exclusives, they've been over. So I think a lot of this conversation could have been prevented, to be honest. But I get it. Conway the Machine felt like he needed to address it. Westside Gunn, he probably addressed it the best way a long time ago by saying F Funk Flex, and that was it. But they got to understand. And for those who don't understand, some of this is deeply rooted in the 5 boroughs, New York City, not embracing Buffalo. And Funkmaster Flex being on Hot 97, not dropping bombs on New Griselda Records and drum work, don't get it twisted, songs, still feels like they haven't arrived. That's what it feels like to them, regardless of how popular they are. It doesn't feel like they have arrived. Now, I'm going to end this by saying it's not like you can't go and find a clip of all 3 of them with Funkmaster Flex freestyling. It's just as simple as that. The album was what it was for Conway the Machine. The fact that Flex doesn't play it doesn't mean anything, right? The fact that Sus One doesn't play it doesn't mean anything. And having this situation isn't going to make them play your music. We've been down this road. And stop disrespecting P-Rock Funk Flex. Because honestly, we know, we hold him in a higher regard, regardless of how active he is in this game or not. We hold him in a much higher standard and regard and esteem and whatever way you want to place it than we do you. We don't take anything away from Flex because guess what? Funkmaster Flex love Bugstar Ski. Like, don't forget, don't be a revisionist. We know who Funk Flex is. We know his legend, but he's overstepping his boundaries. That's going to do it for me. You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Vegas World INC. And remember, this is the final episode of Hip Hop Now podcast, but the content will continue. Stay locked in, subscribe to this podcast, and also to really be caught up and see me on a regular basis, because it's coming very soon. Talk about hip-hop, talking about albums, album reviews, all of that. Visit my channel, the B-Roll Network, on YouTube. The link to that channel is in the description of this episode. Hit that subscribe button because I'm trying to get my subscribers up. Until next time, y'all. I'm not a fan. I'm a critic. Peace.